Hi everyone, welcome to Lift Big Now. My name is Ashim and you're going to be watching training footage of last night's deadlift workout. My training buddy Atif and I had an intensity session and we worked up to our individual training maxes. While these training clips are rolling, I want to continue with the Build Your Own Strength Training Template series. This is part 2 of the series, and in part 1 I talked about selecting lifts on a macro level. In this part, I want to go more into detail about selecting lifts and creating a layout of your training week. Just to go over this very simply put, most of us want to train the big 3 power lifts, the squat, the bench press and the deadlift. But there's no need to limit compound lifts to just these 3, even though they are the most popular. You can choose other lifts like the front squat or overhead press, etc. But just to keep things simple, I'm going to assume that on a long-term basis, you want to get strong on the squat, bench press and deadlift. I will talk about other lifts later on in the series, so don't be dejected if you want to do something else. Follow along and pick up on the guidelines. Given that you want to get strong on the big 3 power lifts, the first thing to consider is choosing between these 3. Contrary to what the current popular strength training routines push, I do not advocate programming all lifts the same way. No matter if you are new to lifting or if you're more of an experienced lifter, your strength and skills on all the 3 power lifts will never be the same, so your programming should not be either. So I would advise you to choose between the squat and the deadlift. Ideally, I want an upper body type lift and a lower body type lift because it's easier to balance training that way. So bench should stay constant, or you can switch it to overhead presses or any other pressing variation sometime down the line. But to begin with, you can do bench and deadlifts or bench and squats. Next, in your weekly layout, you should place your big lifts in the beginning of your training week. This training week doesn't have to be 7 days. You can be on a 5 or 7 or 14-day rotation as well. This is up to you. Usually, if you're in college or school or something that forces you to live a structured life, then weekly layouts are the easiest to cope with, at least until midterms and finals roll around. The rest of us who work or run businesses can have more flexible rotations. Keep in mind that we are working on a hypothetical template here. So let's say you have chosen bench and squats. If you want to get strong on bench and squats, you place them in the first 2 days of your training. We will get into individual lift programming in the next part of the series, but the overall goal is to get your heavy work done in the beginning of the week when you are most fresh. You have to choose which lift you want to place first, squats or bench. You can figure this out as you train. I like to place lower body right in the beginning, and then the next day I will either take off as a rest day or I will do the press movement. It is up to you. In the last video, I talked about choosing secondary lifts. I mentioned movements and muscle groups, and I know some of you can be confused because strength training is about movements, yet here I am talking about muscle groups. So to clear up any confusion that may have happened, we want to hit like movements that are like the squat, like the bench press and like the deadlift. These movements should help them. We have no way of really knowing if they will or not, because the only way to test them would be to do them in place of the actual lifts and then come back to the actual lifts and see if there's any improvement. But we know from experience that strength imbalances can happen, and we want to avoid unnecessary strength imbalances. All the secondary lifts that you choose must reflect positively on the main lifts. And sometimes you need to keep muscles in mind. You can't train bench and then dumbbell bench as your only pressing movements for many months on end. This is not wise. You would be neglecting overhead pressing and shoulders, which do play a part in your bench press, your main lift. Choose your secondary lifts and place them towards the end of the week and after the main lifts. So to recap, place your big lifts in the beginning of your training week or training rotation and place your secondary lifts after the main lifts later in the week. As an example, I've placed a slide that shows that you have hypothetically selected the bench press and squats as and the squat. I keep calling it squats, but it's just a movement. Squat is actually a position, but let's not get into that. That's a matter for a whole other chapter. So I've placed a slide that shows that you have hypothetically selected the bench press and squat as your priority lifts, with deadlift just behind, and your secondary lifts are overhead press, pull-ups, dumbbell rows and lunges. The second slide will list how you will place them in a typical 7-day training week, assuming you can train 4 times a week and you only need to do these main lifts once. I have not gone into individual lift details and programming of each exercise. I will begin that in the next part of this series, so stay tuned and best lifts to you. Thank you very much.